Hello everyone, this is Power, and today we'll be discussing, as I'm sure you're aware, the recent announcement of Halo 5 Forge mode. With me today in my extraordinarily small panel of extraordinarily underqualified people is Z4 and Archifex. So since we're discussing Halo 5 Forge, our resumes don't really matter. So I'm Power, been in the community since 2010, Z4.
I am Z4, the Great Mind and leader of Plague.
I am Archivex, the Archon of the Armored Federation.
And today we'll be discussing, as I said, Halo 5 Forge mode. So today, um, there was the Windows 10 press conference where I thought we'd be getting news on Halo 5. Turns out that was wrong, and midway through the day on Halo Waypoint, they actually dropped some news on Halo 5 Forge mode. So we've had a couple hours to look over this briefly and digest the information, and we'll be discussing at least what we know today on Forge, which is a lot more than we knew a couple days, like 4 days ago when we recorded our first episode of the Coffee House. So with that out of the way, let's get to the first major talking point for Halo 5 Forge mode. Probably the most important thing, right, is that Forge launches in December, which was speculation. I got half my prediction correct, per se. I thought we'd be getting a PC editing. Turns out that's not true, but we are getting a delayed Forge mode. So, your guys' opinions on this. What do you guys think of a delayed Forge launch?
Oh, well, I feel like this could mean two things. Um, and both of them are kind of, or the first one's kind of speculation, but my first little speculation bit is that 343 isn't too, they're not dead set on a perfect launch for Halo 5, so if it does go a little bit rocky, then they do have a backup plan to pull people back in with the Forge system coming in December, because if Halo 5 doesn't work off the bat, and a lot of people have had bad experience with MCC, so I really wouldn't doubt if a lot of people drop it off out of the first week or 2 weeks. But if they have the Forge coming back, then that'll be kind of like a way to draw the people back into the game, or the people that they can. But that's just my speculation bit of it. But as far as what I think for clans, since it is moved back to December, I feel like it's not too big of a deal because it's really only a month to 2 months away from the launch of Halo 5, and we can easily just use matchmaking as a source for training and discipline. It's going to be a little bit hard because I'm assuming that we will still have custom games. So even though we don't have Forge, I'm assuming that we'll be able to edit the game chat or the game types and a little bit about the map variants. So we'll have to do training on like actual matchmaking maps. And I'm not too sure if they're going to have BTB maps to do team tax or 8v8s with other clans off the bat, but we'll just have to see. Personally, like when the Halo 5 comes out, I'm just going to go straight to Warzone because it's a 12v12 variant, and I'm just going to be dead on recruiting from there. And I just can't wait for Forge to come out in December.
Ark, your take on this?
Well, I think the time that we've been given, 2 months, it's a big time window for us to prepare for what's ahead. And with Forge coming to a very big concept, there's so many things that are being introduced. Um, New object types, textures, FX emitters, all of these things are new to us. It's going to take a while for them to get everything finalized and prepared for us to have access with, I guess you could say. But I think the wait is well worth it, and there may be a trouble of, finding something to do in the meantime of lacking that forge ability. But with all the new features that are being implemented within Halo 5 Forge, I think the wait is well worth it. Honestly, I think comparing Halo Reach and Halo 5, I mean, I think this is going to be a huge takeoff for us. I mean, there hasn't been anything I've seen like this before in terms of having 1,600 objects in Halo Reach Forge. I mean, we only had like a couple, roughly 200 maybe. Um, from there, I kind of see it as a major improvement, but as the fan base and supporters of the game, I think it would be only fair for us to wait for this time window of 2 months and see where things take off. But other than that, I mean, I'm going to do exactly what Z4 is doing. I'm going to be participating in Warzone and recruit from there. I really don't have any expectations other than Forge to be a little more seamless and more open with construction. We're going to see a lot of things that we might have never even seen before. Um, that's about it, really.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go with my opinion now. In the broader Halo community, so like Reddit and all those different sites, right? And Halo Waypoint, whatever. The idea of this delay for Forge has been tossed around for a while. Since for example we passed PAX E3, all these different events, and we got no Forge news. Like, we're now within a month, and at this point in time, people are freaking out because they didn't have news on Forge, and that's what really led people to believe we were going to be expecting this delay. So I'm not particularly surprised by it. I'm gonna take a little more optimistic approach than what Z4 said. I don't think this is a situation of like 343 being fearful that the game's going to fail. So this is a way to drag people back into the game. I'm going to propose the idea that I think they've learned from MCC and the fact that they don't want to ship a failed game. So they want to make sure that when something leaves the doors of 343, it's going to work. And if that is the situation going on 343 right now, then I do like this approach, right? Because we're seeing effectively they're scaling Halo 5 as it launches. I think it's a clever idea because the game is going to start relatively small, right? You're going to have, well, not small per se, you're going to have campaign, arena, warzone. A couple weeks later, you have big team battle. Like 6 weeks later, I'm assuming, because the game launches like end of September. Assuming we'll get this like a second week of December. That's like 6 weeks later, you'll get Forge. That probably coincides to near Christmas time, so that also draws more people back into the game, right? So I think it's clever for them to delay like this. It also gives them more time to really build up the quality of Forge. I think the important question for us personally is like, how does this affect the transition for clans, right? Because this community is obviously super heavily reliant on Forge, right? So the question comes up like, should we or will the community shift over to Halo 5 later? Because we know backwards compatibility comes up, I believe, sometime in November, right? So is it foreseeable that maybe we'll have a situation where Reach clans shift over to Reach on the Xbox One and then to Halo 5? Or do we all go to Halo 5 with no custom games and then wait till Forge and just never go backwards compatibility Reach? So this brings up an interesting question as to how we'll address Reach on the Xbox One that hasn't really been discussed, because this delay is long enough where it actually comes after the launch of Reach per se on Reach on the Xbox One. I don't think that's the case, and I hope that's not the case, right? But I think it's a real question we have to think about. I think the topic of how clans will transition now that we have this news on delay will be a good topic for our discussions coming up this weekend. But now moving forward, let's discuss the particulars of Forge itself, right? So what are your guys' favorite aspects of Forge as we've seen it so far?
Well, I think the most satisfactory I shouldn't say satisfactory, but the most pleasing of the features that have been implemented into Halo 5 Forge would have to be the FX emitters. I mean, there are times where for people like myself that have always wanted a little more resource to make a video more dazzling, if you will. I'm sorry for the lack of words here, but anyways, I mean, we don't really see so much of elements put into a game, especially like Halo 5, like fog, FX emitters, just certain things like these, the smallest things in the game, I'm going to appreciate because they weren't there before in the previous game titles, and now they're being introduced. It's always fun to see and experiment with the small things within the game before you take on with anything bigger. But I see much potential in some of the things that they've added. Maybe I'm missing a few things here and there, but I imagine as a whole for Halo 5 Forge system, I think it will be a great experience for everyone.
Yeah, like personally, I love the new Forge. From what I've seen, like I can't really speak too much since I actually haven't like experienced it with my own controller. But from what I've seen from the previews, I feel like it's going to be great for clans, and the people who are great at Forge are only going to increase. But then again, the people who are absolutely terrible at Forge are going to have a little bit of a harder time since it's a little bit more complex and it's going to require a little bit more thinking when you're actually putting designs into your bases or maps. And I just love so many features. Like you will be able to have, I believe it's 1,024.
Yeah, 1024.
1024, yeah, blocks, which is incredible. I can't say anything about the performance of how many blocks there are, but I'm assuming that they're going to be good since it is Xbox One, and I do believe that they've already learned from the MCC mistakes. And I do think that the rendering is going to be improved by then. And but the two major things that I do enjoy are definitely the coloring. You can have a primary, secondary, and tertiary color on most objects, and you can change the colors for those. And I think they said that there was like 100 or
approximately
like
100 different colors. Yeah.
which I think is incredible. Like these like clans will be able to mix and choose like colors and decide all these patterns on their bases. Like if they don't like the default texture, then they're more than likely to change it, and I'm assuming that they will. But the biggest thing that I'm most excited about is definitely the actual landscape and how we get to forge, you could say, the environment around the bases. Um, it's just great. Like you will actually be able to mess with the environment. Like I know that in H2A you actually had like terrain pieces that you place down, but we might have that in Halo 5, I think there's also it like fits with your base and it like adjusts around your map, and I just
It's
think
more
that's great.
seamless, basically.
Yeah, so like
Exactly.
it's like
And
kind
that
of
is something to appreciate.
to like describe for the viewers how this works, right? Is to the best of my knowledge, the way it works is picture you have like a piece of fabric, and a piece of fabric is like the map ground art uh, uh, texture per se, right? And then you add landscaping beneath it. So like you'll add a rock or you add like a hill per se, and the hill will go under it. And so like the ground texture will shape itself around the hill you added, so it blends in really well as opposed to MCC Forge where you had rocks and they looked like rocks. You had hills and they came with their default textures, so it's a lot smoother. You can see it in the launch video they had. I'll link that in the description. But generally, the way you shape land in Halo 5 Forge is a lot better than it was on MCC, at least in my opinion, right? That's just a general rundown of how the system he's describing works. I think my favorite aspect of Forge on Halo 5, I think the important thing we note is that in their blog post on Halo, what they said is that this is a ongoing free service for Halo 5, and we'll be adding new content as it goes on, right? I think that's a huge step as opposed to MCC, Reach, even 3, right? They're going to be adding new content progressively to Forge. I think that's a really big jump, and that speaks to like how they're viewing Forge like a long-term thing. This isn't like a one-time project they release it, they're done. They're going to keep continuing to add. I think that's a really big feature. I think it's something we should really be focusing on moving forward. As opposed to actual forgeability features, I think the object count is pretty good. I know in the Q&A, some of the people did from that video, they mentioned they got up to around like 950 objects before they started encountering some issues. So that's still a lot of objects, right? It's a huge amount of stuff. So I'm pretty confident like this will be a really quality Forge system. And I think looking forward into Halo 5 in the long-term survivability clans, I think this is like really what we've been looking for the optimal service for forging.
Yeah, and I love the new maps too, like how there's the snow map. I don't think there's ever been like that kind of like snow texture as a Forge map besides maybe that one Halo.
We never had a Forge heavy. We had Avalanche on Halo 3, which had snow textured vehicles, but it wasn't really a Forge heavy map. Like you did not have the full palette. On Halo 5, they've noted that all the maps have the full palette. So in theory, you could spawn in like scorpions on any map you want. I'm not sure why you would do it, but the idea is that you can. But we aren't sure how big these maps are, right? Because we only saw like 2 screenshots of each picture. And I've tried to look into it, and again, on the AMAs these people did, they said that they're huge maps, like about as far deep as they went into the topic, right? But they said like they built large maps. They had no issues with building like borders for the map. So I'm hoping we're talking about Forge world size maps. Hoping for it, right? I'm not sure if we'll if we get something along the lines of even like a Blood Gulch and a half, I'll be okay with it. I think it's a doable thing.
If I may interrupt, honestly, I think the size of a map really doesn't seem to matter as much as what you can do with the map.
For sure.
I mean, of course, you know, the map size is only a boundary, but your imagination isn't. What I what I persist to believe is that we can do just about anything in whatever map they can throw at us. I mean, we have this immense block count, and it's a great thing. I think a lot of us can appreciate that. But one thing we really should appreciate is the depths they've really put into the Forge system overall. I mean, we do not have any of these things in any other Halo title. Maybe fixed land structures like the terrain and everything, but I think it's nice to have terrain canvas maps finally laid out for us instead of building your own, where it's more seamless. There isn't really much of a staticky look whenever you look at the ground or some kind of stitched look to it. And yeah, map size is quite a big concern for most clan leaders, I'm sure. I can imagine, but I think we can work our way around that as a community. We're able to adapt in even the most complex circumstances and extremities that are thrown at us within game. And I think it's just a typical thing where we have to pursue to adapt and get used to things that are new to us instead of just, bashing against it. Um, Other than that, I mean, yeah, map size is a very ideal thing to look at as far as map characteristics because it's your working space. But at the same time, um, you know, that working space can be manipulated for other uses as well, regardless of its size and dimensions.
Yeah,
Use
and
your imagination.
yeah, and like speaking of the size, like Archivix is saying, and how we can be creative with these maps, I've just thought and remembered that they did say that we were able to use all of the objects and forge like items on every single one of the maps, not just the three canvases that were given, which is like the space and the snow and the regular one. So I think that's going to be pretty interesting, depending on what kind of BTB maps we are going to be getting. Because I know that on Halo 2 Anniversary, some of my forgers put together a map on Bloodline, which is the Blood Gulch equivalent on or whatever the Halo 2 one is. But anyways, and we also even put one together on Stone Town. So I'm sure that we can put together some pretty interesting and unique maps on there. Um, but just to add on a little bit to the forging, another thing that I thought is really beneficial to the clan community, especially with these larger style bases and maps, is definitely the grouping. And if you didn't know what the grouping was, it's basically groups can be created dynamically with a single button press, and all these objects will form together to basically be one item, and you can move these around. And I do believe that you can duplicate them. I'm not 100% sure, but I wouldn't see why you can't. So, with duplicating these objects, you can easily create multiple different towers fast instead of actually having like I know I'm a forger myself. I forge a lot of bases. Typically, I have a couple of the same tower if I'm doing a certain type of fire base or layout, and I need multiple ones. And let's just say one of those towers takes me 30 minutes. Instead of having to go and do this 5 times, I can just click the duplicate button after I group them, and boom, I'm done in such a significantly slower or lower time, which I guess is going to give us more um, options on how to detail things because we won't have to recreate it in another place. And that's also going to be good for like arena style maps where it's like actually uh, symmetric, I guess you could say. That's going to help a lot. And the second thing that I noticed was the welding, which I feel like a couple of people missed. And basically, I'm just going to read like the definition of this is grouped objects can be optionally be welded to their parent object. This allows them to all physically move around together. You can make a soccer ball with traffic cone spikes that rolls around or attach a weapon pad to a larger animating object. So basically, this means that we can be really creative. Like I know General JB, I think, tried to make an armored tank with crates and scorpions. Well, guess what? That might
Oh,
actually be a thing now. I'm not sure about vehicles, but that's just kind of like the thing. Like I feel like we might be able to take some crates and attach it to some like 3x1s, and maybe we can put it on top of the tank. But I don't know
Yeah.
if we can attach them to vehicles.
Yeah, like I don't want to
That
crush
might be a step
dreams, but
in
in
another direction.
Q&A he did, he pretty much explicitly stated that at this point in time, you cannot weld to vehicles. So
Okay.
that's out of the question at this point. But that's still a huge thing for like custom games, and
Yeah,
we'll see how it
and
applies to
scripting
Forge,
too.
right? Yeah, like so for example, you could have some weird game mode where you can have like a traffic cone like spike ball, and have like scripts
Hmm.
for that, and have like a new version of Griff Ball or some. But like, there's so many options this
Yeah.
opens up for like creating new game modes. So like, maybe not for clans, although yes, there will be some use for it. Like, surely somebody in the community will figure out ways to use this, right? Like, MCC,
Interesting booby
yeah,
traps.
like the MCC Forge community for clans has some super creative map systems. But even for games like Infection or Griff Ball or like race games, like there's so many options. This really opens up and allows the player to really use. I think it's a really good thing that there's so many options opened up to the player. I think that one of the ideas I just had when we were sitting here was that in the event like these maps, like I think I yeah like Architects was right in that, like I think Forge World's size isn't too significant because like when you look at the majority of maps on Forge World within clans, right, the vast majority of those maps are pretty much empty. So like you'll be sitting here with like a clan will spawn in like Blood Gulch and it'll drive to Paradiso, And like, yeah, it's a big map, but it's not really a useful big map. It's just empty land space. And I think we might run into a situation here where we're running into like, in the event these maps are slightly smaller than Forge World, I think we'll have a lot denser maps because the object count is huge. Like, this object count is undeniably huge, and I think we might run into a situation where like we might have more urban style maps. Do you get what do you guys think it's a viable idea? Do you guys think the community will look at like a more urban setting?
I guess it just depends on what kind of style of objects we get and how the shaping, but I just guess it depends on the style of the forger, if it's urban or whatever it might be.
Uh,
You know, I'm sorry, but when it comes down to making a choice of how big you want a map, I mean, realistically, we couldn't use the entirety of Forge World back on Reach. So when you're approaching to make a map with realistic goals here, you need to consider using all of the space, and usually that is what I think of when it comes to forging a map. Um, like I said, you weren't able to use the entirety of Halo Reach's Forge World as you may want it to. But I think with this concept, with a realistic supply of space, where we could use nearly the entirety of the map, however we want it, I mean, it's more ideal now. A lot of people may or may not agree, but I think within time, you just need to see for yourself and try and be a little more realistic when it comes to utilizing your idea. Just try not to be so expansive with it.
yeah, I feel like we
In my
Go ahead. My bad. Yeah, I feel like this is strange where we've
I'm
run into the
sorry.
concept where it's like we're sitting here right now, we're talking as if Halo 5 isn't that great of a Forge mode, but like Halo 5, like just to clarify at least my opinion here, right? I'm willing to bet you guys agree, right? It's that like as it stands now, assuming this works as advertised, this appears to be, bar none, like the most complete, most effective Forge tool we've ever seen for Halo. And I think
Right.
like we need to make that really clear off the bat. Like we aren't trying to sit here and say like, well, Forge World might have been better, but we need to figure out how to do as good. Like no, like Forge World in comparison to what we have advertised to us right now looks aged, and I think that's a really important thing we need to point out.
We all need to come to the conclusion that Halo Reach was good, but potentially the next game could be better. And a lot of people are staying on Reach right now thinking this is going to last forever.
I think like one of the things, at least for things we've yet to learn about the current Forge tool, is how guns work and how vehicles work, right? So those are the two things they didn't really touch on. In the AMA, it was brought up like, will we be able to forge like weapon skins and stuff like that into the map? And he didn't comment on that because like for their AMAs, they're allowed to comment on what was already announced. So these aren't ruled out by any means, right? But they aren't confirmed yet. There's just a couple things we need to point out, like what we still don't know about this Forge mode, and there's still reasonable large amount of things we don't know. We don't know how guns work. We don't know how vehicles work. We aren't entirely sure if every single game mode will be forgeable. Obviously, Warzone isn't. I'm assuming everything else will be, but there's a lot of exact question marks that haven't been answered yet. Z4, is there anything you saw in this that you would like to see, like new news about moving forward?
I guess I kind of would love to see, like I don't think this is gonna happen, but I know that since we have grouping now, I feel like it would be really cool if there was a way to save a grouping so that you can use it on other maps. I know that this is probably not gonna happen because I just don't think that they're at this level yet, but I feel like it would be really cool if there was an option to save like a select number of these groups that you make so that you can use them on other maps so that you can have signature barracks or rooms or things like that on all of your maps. Or maybe it might be some type of structure that you make out of the Forge or a scripting object that we see. But I'm also interested to see what other options we have when it comes to scripting. Like, I'm not sure if there was confirmation of whether you can script the lights, because I know that there are lights now that you can have in your map that to better fix it, like actual light fixtures. And I know that there will be oh, and I forgot, we haven't even talked about the most important part here. We forgot about the whale, man. Like,
The whale.
that's the biggest part here.
The
Like,
whale,
gosh,
yeah.
that whale is going to be huge. But anyways, yeah, I just am kind of interested in that. And like you said, definitely the weapons and vehicles, and those are going to be pretty interesting to see if we can actually have those But other than that, I guess it's just the weapons, especially from the Warzone, like all the different attachments to the weapons that
Speaking of
we've
weapons,
seen.
I don't mean to interrupt you before, but do you think in that, 1600 part list, do you think there will be some possibility of weapons of all types and, with all the diverse attachments now being implemented into Halo 5, do you think those will be included in Forge? I mean, between all three of us here, I mean,
It might actually be realistic because that number is pretty high. So maybe weapons and vehicles contribute a lot to that number.
Like I thought about that earlier. I was going to mention it, and like I'm assuming, and I think in the clips that are going through the weapons, I think there was like over like I want to say like in total there would have been like 200 of those combined between like guns and vehicles. So
Hmm.
even if it's only like 1,400 objects and 200 weapons, which is probably the case, I'm willing to bet that's the case. Um, that's still immensely more. I'm not sure the object count that was on Reach or on Halo 4, or not Halo 4 MCC, but I'm willing to bet it was less than 500 different objects. Willing to bet on that. So to say that like the 1,600 number might be inflated and it actually might be 1,400, that's still an immense amount of objects, bar none.
right?
That's still a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I think the
Um,
scripting options. I think that'll be really important because I think like scripting in MCC had a huge amount of potential for clans, but it was never really utilized because clans never really shifted over to MCC. So the majority of clans still operated on Reach, right? But I think like once we get the entire community to focus on like how to use script maps, I think like within the first couple months of Forge, I think we'll have some really awesome Forge because like scripting is huge. Like for people who
Very
never
complex,
played
yeah.
for people who never played MCC, they know what scripting is. You can add like buttons, so like you can have a button, you press it, and like gates open up or close or stuff like this. So like you can have the maps can be non-static, and they could actually you can actually change stuff in the map as you're playing. I think it's really huge potential there, and that's something like I really want to see developed in Halo 5 because like in MCC was there, but it's never utilized to what I felt should have been its maximum potential.
There is one thing I just thought about. Hazard scripting. Um, I don't really know how to explain, but it's just something that popped in my head. Maybe this could be a possibility in terms of the broadening of objects, elements, and such. I think one thing we could do, we could manipulate scripting to make emulate hazards throughout a combat environment in the game. Um, maybe a block that would slide over and hit something, or maybe something that'll drop down like automatically if someone steps in a specific area.
Landmines, artillery, like there's a lot of things. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of
Right.
things you could theoretically do with this. That's what I mean. Like there's really so much potential behind scripting that Reach simply didn't have.
And I really hope we do have a more expansive and more industrious set of tools that we can use in terms of scripting, more resources, more strategies to just enhance the overall game experience in terms of a custom-made map.
I know one of the things they confirmed, or at least they touched on the blog post, was that you can have like logic switch conditions. So like you can have a block with like up to 4 conditions have to be met before the block will switch. So for example, you could have a gate and you could have like 4 different buttons that need to be pressed before this gate goes down, right? So like in theory, you could have a raid, for example, right? And like to get into the main base, you need to lower this gate. But there's 4 different hubs your clan needs to secure before you can lower that gate to get into the main base, right? And that's just like something I thought of literally right now on the spot. So like there's so many different things like the news because like this scripting system is better than it was in NTC, right? There's so many different things this new script system can do that like it's really immense as to what this opens up in the community. And I'm really
Yeah, and
excited
if
to
we
see
take
that.
advantage of this, then it's going to be great. It's going to benefit the community a lot. It's going to make the community look a lot more appealing if we can actually use all of these great features that we've been asking for such a long time actually coming true. Like I know that a lot of people are still going to be complaining after Forge comes out because that's just how it is. People are going to have something to complain about. Doesn't matter how perfect the game is. I just feel like they've actually listened to the community in this case. A lot of things have been addressed that I have been wondering, especially like the show all boundaries thing, where you can see all the kill volumes once you've already set them down, because that really gets annoying after you place one down. Then you have to go to this one to check where the boundaries are, and then you have to go to the other one and check all these different boundaries. And another thing was in the H2A Forge, it took you like 2 minutes to get out of your Forge ball. But now in Halo 5, you can just go into your regular player stance without actually have to loading the lighting, which helps a whole lot. It significantly drops the time that we're in Forge, and I honestly think that's great.
Yeah,
And I think one of you mentioned it earlier in the session. They are also going to be adding things later on in the game, so we might even see some more objects, maybe even more landscapes or
more
vehicles.
Yeah, more guns, because I know it's a fact they're adding the Halo 2 rocket launcher post-launch, right? So that's an example of something they might add in post-launch. I was admitting that would probably be out before Forge launches. I'm assuming that's the case, right? But like that's an example of them like adding guns to the game post-launch. So like it's a huge potential for them to add new assets to the game, right? And I think there's so many different things that can be improved. I was going to mention something and I forgot my mind. Now it's back. For clans, right? Do you guys think we'll see a situation where, like, at least for the first couple months, clan leaders decide to like make specific Forge groups within their clan to really explore and develop Forge? Because this is something that's entirely brand new, and I don't, like, at least in my opinion, admitting I'm not super attached to the community anymore, but I feel like in early Halo Reach, there's much more of like a Forge culture in clans. I'm not sure.
The Forge community was introduced in Reach, and I think as the game goes on, I mean, you're going to see that Forge community still there, but maybe not in terms of the clan community, even though there may be a few individuals here and there that may have been rubbed off by people that were in the Forge community. But other than that, I mean, I do see the possibility of groups being organized in unison to create more efficient maps, more creative ideas.
And even me and Archivex experienced this on MCC with Ricky Lane. Ricky Lane and his guys were really experienced with scripting, and at the time of us getting the game, Archivex and we didn't really know too much about scripting, so we got a lot of help from him. So like I feel like a lot of clans are going to be better than others in certain aspects, and alliances can definitely help this out. Like, let's just say that we have this one clan with this great landscaping forger that they can alliance with this great scripting, and then a three-way alliance could be somebody that's great with details and structures, and then they create this huge, big triangle of trade and, like,
the fair trade system we were implementing together. We actually came up with that idea. I myself actually introduced that to a few of my alliances and everything. We basically, we exchanged one service for a specific exchange of service that we desire, and one of the essential things were actually scripting, believe it or not. So I think scripting could also be a way to service other clans and assist them. And not to mention, it could be a way to help others that don't know so much about it in depth as Ricky Lane or maybe one of us here right now. But I think with that scripting, it could mean a lot to the disadvantaged people that haven't had the opportunity to explore the possibilities of scripting, and especially with Halo 5. I could see many opportunities coming our way in terms of, learning more. So I do anticipate to see more people come our way. Not me specifically, but other people that know more in depth of scripting. This could really help us become more enlightened, and it could modernize some of the people that have been behind on previous gen consoles.
I feel like probably the most important thing this Forge mode accomplishes, right, is that, like, I think this, as again, assuming it works as advertised, right, I think this really ensures, like, the long-term survivability of Halo 5.
The continuity of the clan community.
Yeah, like, the problem with Halo 4, the reason why Halo 4 failed, right, is because Halo 4's Forge was bad, right? The reason why MCC failed is because its connection was non-functional. I think that we're looking at, like, this was really the last puzzle piece in the puzzle that was, like, will Halo 5 be able to, like, viably support clans long-term? And, like, that was, like, the huge concern I've had forever, ever since, like, Halo 5 was announced, right? Because, like, this is really, like, the make it or break it moment for the community. Like, if Halo 5 fell on its face, the community's pretty much dead, unless you want to go, like, reach 2017, right? So this is really the only opportunity we had to get it right, and I feel like, as it stands now, as it's advertised, 343 got it right. And I think that really ensures, like, the long-term playability. Like, this is the bridge to next gen for the community. I guess current gen per se. I won't say next gen because it's been out for 2 years, 3 years. Current gen. That's what it's done.
taking this route with the game has been a huge step forward, and not many people were confident in that at first. But now I think with more details being spilt out every now and then, I mean, some people may come back. I want to say it's a spike of activity that will rise in the game's entirety. I mean, as soon as that comes out, especially in the clan community, I mean, we will have this spike of activity. This is only my prognosis, but I do believe there is a significant amount of hope left, and especially for the generations to come. But coming to my conclusion, I think the continuity of our existence will be fairly ensured in this case.
All right, Z4, closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts. I just feel like I just can't wait for the Halo 5 Forge to come out. We just need the community to be able to adapt to the Halo 5 and just get used to it, and don't give up on the game, even though it doesn't have a Forge the first month or two before or when it comes out. I just highly recommend doing matchmaking, even going into custom games on these matchmaking maps, and just practicing with your clans. Resume your activity on Halo 5, and back to the Reach compatibility thing. I would highly recommend not going back. Just don't go back. It's just going to try to break your old habits of going back to Reach. It's not needed. Stay on Halo 5. And overall, I just can't wait to see what the Forge has to offer for this community.
Okay, my closing thoughts, right? I think this really closes the debate as to whether or not Halo 5 is a clear successor to Reach. It is. I don't think there's any real contest as to whether or not like Reach is a better game than 5 at this point. I think the question now becomes for the broader Halo clan communities. I think the question becomes, how do we properly manage the transition to Halo 5? I think that's the real question, because this delay is important, right? Because we're now looking at the community won't be operating at 100% capacity at least until December or January, when we have our first real group of maps, right? I think these are the questions we really want to look at, and that's why I'm really excited that this coming weekend we have our panel with clan leaders. So hopefully we'll be able to ask these questions. This is an entirely new set of questions, entirely new topic we can add to that conversation. So definitely look forward to that. I'm super excited about Halo 5 now, because this is, as I said, this is really the last piece of the puzzle I've been looking for as to how playable is Halo 5 from the clan perspective. I think that's all. Thanks for watching this video. I guess I could do the cliche like, comment, subscribe, because that's what all the YouTubers do today. As mentioned before, we're trying to get a panel for clan leadership philosophy and clan communication and professionalism in the community for this weekend, so look forward to those videos. Thank you for your time. This is Power, Z4, and Archifex. Out.
See ya.
Bye.